Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. So, let us continue our reading of Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. It's a quite witty book, makes you think, and he is quite funny, even though he can be a bit tart at times. But either way, I can see why his books have lasted as long as they have. This new section is titled Upon the Blessed Isles. Let's begin. The figs are falling from the trees. They are good and sweet, and as they fall, their red skin bursts. I am a north wind to ripe figs. So, already coming in hot. North wind is coming in strong, so it's helping everyone to drop and be ready. Thus, like figs, these teachings fall to you, my friends. Now consume their juice and their sweet meat. It is autumn about us, and pure sky, and afternoon. Behold, what fullness there is about us. And out of such overflow, it is beautiful to look out upon the distant seas. So here you see a lot of imagery. Autumn, so changing of seasons. Harvest season. It's time to take in all that good produce that you've made. So you're tending to your pumpkin patch, your squashes. It's all time to reap the rewards. It's definitely full. Once one said, God, when one looked up distant seas, but now I have taught you to say overman. Oh, jeez. So here he's really pushing the overman, right? When you look out upon a distant sea, we think of Subhanallah. All praise is due to Allah, right? Alhamdulillah. Glory be to my Lord the highest. And now he's contending he's submitted a new word. This puts the human at a level of the sublime, I'd argue, conquering the fear of distance and depth and space. Letting it have awness over you, yet not letting it overcome you with its magnanimity, but has allowed you to interact with it and remain still. God is a conjecture, but I desire that your conjecture should not reach beyond your creative will. Could you create a God? This is the tricky part here. He's being a bit metaphorical here, but also atheistic at the same time. But people do create their own idols, their own icons. They do not speak to me of any gods, but you could well create the overman. So here, that's a bit unique, isn't it? You can't create God, because God is the creator. But you can create the overman. Perhaps not you yourselves, my brothers, but into fathers and forefathers of the overman, you could recreate yourselves. So recreating yourself in the overman image. And let this be your best creation. So your best creation is the overman. God is a conjecture, but I desire that your conjecture should be limited by what is thinkable. Limited by what is thinkable. This is interesting because when I read something like this, I think about how atheists get upset when we say human intellect is limited, so we can't fully comprehend God, but there are things we can't think. So it's not unwise to say that we're limited by what we can think. Because through thinking we come to know. Could you think a God? But this is what the will to truth should mean to you. That everything be changed into what is thinkable for man, visible for man, feelable by man, so very empirical. You should think through your own senses to their consequences. So deep reflecting through your five senses, really interacting with your environment and looking at outcomes and what you have called world. What we have called world. Notice that. What is our world? What is this world? Each one of us has our own world in a sense. I hear people say that a lot. And it's true. Especially if you are very introspective. You go around thinking, examining, you're really connected to your inner self and you self-reflect a lot. While others are kind of stuck listening to the radio and pop music nonsense. Or whatever mantra they got going on that's being blasted into them to distract their thoughts. People who've broken free from that and interact with themselves naturally and on a raw level look around and at what we call the world and see how we interact with it. And this helps us to really actually come to know our senses better, I'd argue. But each person has their own little mini dimension, right? It's really fascinating. That shall be created only by you. Your reason, your image, your will, your love shall thus be realized. And verily for your own bliss, you lovers of knowledge. So, seeking knowledge, creating your own bliss, realizing the images that you've thought about, using your reason to actualize it. These are all really interesting techniques for actualization. Right? For potentialities and actualities. And how would you bear life without this hope? You lovers of knowledge, you could not have been born either into the incomprehensible or into the irrational. So, hope, lovers of knowledge, incomprehensible, the irrational. So, as a Muslim, we have hope in Allah. We should love learning knowledge, especially knowledge that leads us near to Allah, right? Through knowledge, you can have actually more hope because you begin to see the gray, the nuanced, and to see that life can be quite irrational and incomprehensible at times, right? The more you know, the more you realize you don't know. But let me reveal my heart to you entirely, my friends. If there were gods, how could I endure not to be a god? This is like a Kanye West statement, isn't it? People who acknowledge God, but become envious of God, and they get tested and they are granted a bit of authority, they begin to teeter-totter on calling themselves a prophet, a messiah, or a god. Kanye West has done that. I've seen some black supremacists in the Hebrew Israelite movement say that they are gods. I've seen the occultic women, gold diggers, call themselves goddesses. And I've heard the satanic types call themselves gods, right? A sort of hybrid Baphomet. So, no matter how I square it, I have, and also Fir'aun, right? Pharaoh, he as well thought of himself as a god, even though he defecates and whatnot. But the more you think about it, how many examples in our world of people literally claiming to be a god, or I don't even want to call it ego, but what I want to call it is their self-absorbedness, their magnanimity, their magnificence has become a sort of black mirror. They think they're the sun in the sky, and their light shines and wipes out all others, and they are nothing but shadows under the light of themselves. It's quite strange. But he does mention an interesting aspect here. How could I endure not to be a god? what is unique is that you can strive to be the best you can be. You can strive to earn the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and get into paradise. You do not have to be a god. You cannot be a god. That is shirk. There is only one God. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most high. He shares no authority. None is worthy of worship except Him. Okay? If someone wants to be a god, they want people to worship them. And you wanting people to worship you makes you a person who is committing an act of shirk, I'd argue. In order to have true humility, you're a slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here, what do you see? A rebellious kind of affront, sort of an opponent when someone thinks this way. It's a very interesting psychological aspect here. Hence there are no gods. Though I drew this conclusion, now it draws me. Clever here. He drew this conclusion, but it draws him. So he drew this conclusion that if there were gods, he would want to imitate it. And that draws him as a sort of rebellious, arrogant person. Because once you lose your health, you realize how weak and feeble you are. But when someone is strong and healthy and beautiful and they have money, that is the test of their humility. Because so many people, when they have wealth, they feel untouchable. They're at the top of the pyramid. The only thing above them is the sky. And it's just beautiful horizons and depth. They are so high up that when they look down, everything looks small. And everyone must turn their neck to look at them, and they constantly have to have this angle about them at their vision. And then this kind of energy just pours into them, and they feel more inflated, like they're very special. But when they're down on the ground level, and they're unknowns, and their position, their titles aren't known, they are in despair and want to be idolized. And this draws them as someone who, I'd argue, doesn't deserve what they were given, because they become haughty and arrogant with a puffed up chest. It's very interesting. God is a conjecture, but who could drain all the agony of this conjecture without dying? Shall his faith be taken away from the Creator, and from the eagle his soaring to the eagle heights? God is a thought that makes crooked all that is straight, and makes turn whatever stands. How should time be gone, and all that is impermanent a mere lie? Now, I wouldn't call it a lie. It's an illusion. It's a different dimension. But I wouldn't call it a lie, because then you're calling God a liar. And God is nothing but truth. No lies will come. And people will say, like, oh, Allah calls himself the deceiver. Deception. Or he plots and plans, and it's like, that's a most evident wise truth that is revealed to someone who doesn't understand. But Shaitan is the master of lies. Will promise you things and not deliver. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you warnings and admonitions through messengers and prophets, and has sent down the Quran and laid the path for you and warned you, so he has not lied to you. So I would take issue with how he phrases that. Now when he says makes crooked all that straight and makes turn wherever stands, how we perceive something to be right can actually be wrong. Like cheating. To the person, oh, this could feel so right in the moment, but the truth of it is it can destroy your family and destabilize society, spread disease and abortion. Your senses told you it was right in the moment, And then afterwards you saw the results, the consequences, which were overwhelmingly negative, and you ruined your life. How many men have damaged their lives because they couldn't control their lust? Think about it. They broke their wife's heart because they could not control their ween. The hormones made them feel like, oh, this is fine, you know? I'm a man, I'm an animal, right? Humans are animals, they say. So it's only natural that I do this because I'm high value. But the consequences? Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, don't do adultery. It's a quite detestable thing. And to spread unlawful sexual intercourse is a sin, right? And those who want to spread it in the land are doing a sin. So what the occultist thinks is straight, what the selfish one thinks is right, is obviously going to be laid bare and flat when the wisdom of the Most High is placed before it. It's quite interesting. Quite interesting. To think this is a dizzy whirl of human bones and vomit for the stomach, verily I call it the turning sickness to conjecture thus. Evil I call it, a misanthropic. All this teaching of the one and the plenum and the unmoved and the sated and the permanent. All the permanent that is only a parable. The poets lie too much. Parables and poets. Now, when the people were criticizing Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, they mentioned, oh, he's a mad poet. Sometimes people, I love poetry and I'm getting better and better at it. And sometimes something can be expressed poetically and there's this truth in there, even if it's an ideal. But the Quran isn't poetry. Even if it sounds beautiful, it's not poetry. But poets do have this capacity to enchant the mind through the skills of their tongue and the cleverness of their mind. But there's still a lot of truth in what they say if they're a good poet, especially Shakespeare, right? But there are poets who lie, so it's almost like he's contending that the truly spiritual people, because of the way in which they talk, they're like poets, and how can you trust them? Because you can't trust the poet. It's fascinating, you know, how he's looking at it. What we call world, lovers of knowledge, the irrational, the incomprehensible. How could there be gods if, because he would want to be one, he couldn't endure not being one? People to recreate themselves. The best creation is to become the overman. It's quite interesting. Quite interesting. Blasphemous. But he's on to something, even if he's off track. You know what I mean? Let me know what you think, and if you'd like to join the blog, it's www.subscribestar.com/MilahanArchive. Supports the channel, and you get exclusive content on there. And I post there quite often. So if you like my community style posts, you'll like that a lot more, I think. And there's a wide range. Lots of stuff there. You just gotta type in the search bar, tags of topics, and then you'll see quite a lot. Alright, so take care and hope to see you there.